Well, hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel, and welcome to another episode of Your Pepper Questions Answered. Alrighty, so today I want to talk to you about seeds. Recently, Darcy asked me about seed saving and then went on to elaborate about open pollination versus hybrid and some other terms that come to mind when people think about seeds. And so I wanted to touch on all that today. The first of which is open pollinated. If your seeds are open pollinated versus being hybrid. Open pollinated simply means seeds that were pollinated naturally, be it wind or bug. That's it. You can have isolated open pollinated seeds, but if you don't isolate, then the risk of cross-pollination, which is a term that we're going to go into, the risk of cross-pollination is more likely. Not always likely, but more likely. Open pollination seeds can grow true to the plant that they came from. So if you have a red habanero and it's open pollinated and you don't have cross, I'm going to stop saying don't have cross. Let's just, if you don't have cross, and you plant the seeds from your open pollinated red habanero, then you will grow red habaneros. That's about it for open pollination. I know it sounds like, well, if it's open pollinated, it probably is crossed and things like that. What does cross mean? Cross. In order to cross, first let's talk about pollination in general. So the flower itself has, and I'm going to show you this with an actual flower, has what's called a pistil and anthers. And actually, let's just go show you that real quick. Okay, so let me demonstrate what I'm talking to you about when it comes to anthers and pistil, because it's real simple. These things here, these colored things, those are called anthers, A-N-T-H-E-R-S. Obviously, I put the word on the screen. Those are considered the male part, and that's what holds the pollen. Come down here, you see it turn at an angle, and you see this white thing sticking out here. This is called the pistil, which I also put on screen. This is considered the female part. And there's little pieces to each of these that are, but this is simplified. So essentially what it comes down to is the pollen from the anther, be it from wind or bee or tapping on it if you're doing that, gets onto the pistil, and that is how a flower is pollinated. It's really quite simple. And so obviously the pollen from the anther onto the pistil. And then if you have the pollen from this habanero and it hits the pistil of this ghost pepper, let's say, because of a bee or wind, then that's how cross-pollination happens. It's pollen from a different variety of the same species. However, with chilies, you can, I've gone into 5 domesticated species. I'm not going to go into too much detail. You can cross like an annum and a chinense, it can happen, but I'm not going to go into all that. So just stick to species for now, sake of brevity. Something else worth mentioning is when it comes to cross-pollination, a lot of people don't understand this small, very simple thing. The cross will occur in the seeds of the pod from the flower that was crossed, not the whole plant. So you could save your seeds from the whole thing, and let's say you just threw them all in one pile and planted 30 of them. Well, some of those might have the cross and some might not. Sometimes when you're saving seeds from a non-isolated plant, if you want to be careful or you just want to make sure you're cataloging things correctly, sometimes I will save the seeds from different pods, separate them and label them as such, pod A, pod B, pod C, and then when I plant the following year from A, B, or C, if I see like pod C has a cross, then I know that bag of pod C seeds is crossed, but pod B probably isn't. It's just kind of, if you want to do all that work. Anyway, that's a note about cross that I think is really important. So that's open pollination and cross pollination. Natural pollinating is open pollination, and then cross pollination is, like I said. Hybrids are different. Hybrids are specifically cross-pollinated by breeders and growers and companies to get particular results and a particular kind of pepper the next year, and they'll be sold as F1 hybrids. F1 and F2 and F3 and F4 and F5. F1 is literally, or simply put, generation 1, generation 2, generation 3. And they say you can't grow or shouldn't grow F1 seeds because your plant will probably not grow true to type. That's true. But it begs the question, where do new peppers come from? Where do these people who cross peppers come with new ones? And that's kind of, okay, it's not necessarily complicated. So, and just for the fun of it, you take your F1 plant and you have all your pods, and you plant seeds from those pods. The next generation, F2, F stands for filial, for anyone who wants to know, which also just means generation. The next generation, F2, they say, let's just use general numbers because everything on my channel is generalization. 20 of your 100, let's say you plant 100, 20 of your 100 are going to be the desired traits that you want, and the other 80 probably will be reverting to parent or not look quite right or not have the phenotypical variation in fruit set that you're looking for, and so you would discard them or eat them. Discard them, and the other 20, you would plant those again. And so the F3 of those would probably do 20 to 30% this time, and you would keep those and eat the rest. And F4 and F5 and so on. And they say a pepper plant, or they say plants, a pepper plant is stable after F7. So that's how you get new crosses. So yes, you can plant your F1 seeds, but the likelihood of them growing true for someone who's not trying to make or keep a cross and things like that isn't that high. So, but it's up to you. They're your seeds. Have a good time. Whatever. The fun of peppers at the end of the day is just to have a pepper. So when people hear about hybridization, they mistake that for GMOs because they're modifying the genes. They're not actually. Crossing and selective breeding and things like that have been used for thousands of years by humans to breed the kind of peppers and kind of tomatoes and whatever. Apples, everything was bred with selective breeding. GMO is, how do you put it, not natural. What they would do, or what I've read about, is taking the genes of a completely separate species and possibly an animal and putting it into the genes of a plant to get resistance to disease or resistance to glyphosate, which is, Roundup and stuff like that, and resistance to pesticides. I've read about crossing fish genes into strawberries. I can't imagine why. Oh, I mean, I know there's why, but still. Anyway, so GMOs are just unnatural things that just don't happen in nature. Cross pollination when pepper plants and crosses with tomatoes to make different tomatoes and things like that. That happens all the time. So that's how that goes. So let's see. I hit open pollination, hybrid, GMO, crossing. I have images of what I was talking about with flowers. Okay, doing pretty good, knocking out the list. And so I want to touch real quick on seed saving. Seed saving is really easy, like super easy. And I'm going to go real quick to my cutting board. My wife filmed me showing you, you take the seeds out of a pod, you put them on a napkin. But here, check out what that looks like. And so what I like to do with my seeds when I'm saving them, first of all, obviously you want a ripe pod. Probably a little more ripe than this, but this is all I have today. Unripe pods will give you less germination rates. But basically it's real simple. I cut it, I open it, you can see them all in here. And since it's a seed pod, I don't really care about it. So I pull this out, and there we go. If you want to save every single one, go right ahead. But there's plenty of seeds there. I like to have a plate and a napkin, and I date the napkin. And then usually wearing gloves, I'll just scrape the seeds out. Well, I'll pluck the seeds out if I'm wearing gloves, but I'll scrape the seeds out. This is just for demonstration. I'm just going to eat all this crap probably. Haha. No, I'm just kidding. There's all my seeds, let's just say. Now, because that's dated 8/1, I store it in someplace dark, and I let it dry for 2 weeks. I'll explain why 2 weeks works for me, but that is literally all I do to save seeds, and that's it. Okay, so that's how I save seeds. and I said I put them in a dark spot for 2 weeks. I prefer to dry mine for 2 weeks or more. I've actually found seeds from like 6 months ago drying on a plate, but whatever. Other people will do it for a week. It's your prerogative, it's your seeds. I just like to have mine thoroughly dry. Some people refrigerate and freeze them. The reason why I say, or I think, you know, dry for 2 weeks, especially if you're gonna freeze, is because water expands when it's frozen. So you don't want to run the risk of ruining some seeds to the freezer after drying them and growing them and all that stuff. So let them be really dry, let them get really dry, and then freeze them. But I put mine in a little plastic bag, and then I put them in a little bigger plastic bag, and then I put them in a collected plastic bag with everything, and then it's in a drawer under my bed. They say they last 2 years. I've had seed sprout after 7-8 years. Heck, they took seeds out of permafrost or whatever of a tree that was 30,000 years old and got that thing to germinate. So you never know. One of the things I like to do that I didn't do in the video is I have a square piece of paper in every single bag. It's got the name of the pepper, the year I did it, whether or not it's isolated, and where I got it. I put that on the plate with the seeds, and then when it's time to put the seeds in my little plastic bag, I put the piece of paper in there. I'm good to go. So that is the seed video. That, let's see, Darcy, I hope that answers your questions, and everyone else, I hope you took away something new. I hope I helped you out. Anyway, let's say that's a wrap on YPQA 4. Thanks for watching that episode of YPQA. As always, if I can help you with anything, throw it down in the comments, and I'll get to it as soon as I possibly can. But until then, have a lovely however long it is till I see you next. Take it easy.
Oh my god, what a dork.